Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Monday Masterclass. This is Chapter 5, Content of the Better, Bolder, Braver Marketing Journey. Thank you all very much for dialing in. I keep using the phrase dialing in. I need to stop using that phrase. It's not the 90s anymore. Yes, welcome everybody. Do let us know in the chat where you are watching from. I am currently in sunny Brighton. The sun has come out, so that is much nicer. It was pouring with rain this morning, so it's lovely and sunny now.
Yeah, me too. I had a lovely walk in the company of Simon here, and clocked up many steps in the process just as the sun came out, so that was great. How to run a business and manage to clock up 12,000 steps at the same time. Hashtag start your own. Do it with someone you really like so that you can have your meetings while walking.
Exactly. It's the best
Really
way to do it, for sure.
Lovely. Hi, Yvonne. Yay. And hi, Maria. Hi, Alex. Fabulous. Everyone is in the sunshine. That's the best mindset to be in to start this content party. I've worn my glittery party jumper for the occasion. I've just realised. Must have been a subconscious effort there. Yeah, great. Lovely to have you all. Thanks for joining us. And let's go.
Yeah. So this is chapter 5 in the story. If you are joining us for the first time, then don't worry, you don't have to have watched the first 4 chapters for this all to make sense. The chapters are sort of self-contained in what we talk about, although they do link together. So after this session, you can click in the corner and go back and watch the replay of any of the other chapters. You can also go back and watch any of our other conversations that we've had with some of our guests. And you can also sign up for future events that are coming along in the pipeline. So without further ado, I think it's probably best to get started with content with, I would say, one of the biggest questions that we get. And the first question that people often say when I say, well, what are you doing for content? What's your content that you're making? They kind of go, well, why do I even need to make content? What's the point of making content? I've got a website. I've got a product. What do I need? Why do I need to make content? So what are your thoughts around that question, Francis?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those ones where I'm sure we don't even have to spell it out, but it's probably useful for everyone if we do. And then we can move on. And that's something around showing up, just being present every day. Not every day. Maybe it's not every day, by the way. Could be not every day, once a week. However often you feel like putting yourself out there is going to work for you. It's the idea of, it's not even consistency. It's just being at the party, coming to some parties sometimes, and saying hi, checking in, inviting people to share their own opinions about things, because the buck doesn't stop with your website, and as we all know, we have to invite people to the fireside for the conversation. There's no point being amazing on your website and then not having people know it's there.
Yeah, I think having a great website is definitely a good thing to do. It's definitely a great place to send people to, but there's no point being the best kept secret on the internet if you want people to know about you. And content is one of those things that I think sometimes takes a bit of a mindset shift, and it's a shift from, well, why am I making content? I already know all of this stuff. Why do my clients want to hear about this? Surely that's what I'm going to be doing in my coaching work. And I think it's about shifting that mindset over to, well, what do my clients want to know before we start working together? What's that thing that they're sort of circling around? They're hovering over that get in touch button, or they're thinking about calling you. What's that question they've got in their mind that's stopping them doing that? And content is a great way of getting over some of those hurdles, of answering those questions and being that trustworthy person in the client's mind. So I think the biggest mindset shift really is away from the elements of why am I making content, to who am I making content for and what are they going to get out of it. And as soon as you're making content for your clients, for your ideal clients, then you're not making it for you. So it doesn't really matter so much what you get out of it, because you don't need to get anything out of it, because it's not for you, it's for your client.
That being said, let's stick with mindset for a second, shall we, Simon? Because you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say that's all well and good, but where are we coming from? How are we not going to burn out? What's our mindset in regards to our own limits, beliefs, values, and how can we just bear those things in mind before we embark on this content festivity, basically? Because yes, what we do want to have you leave off from today feeling is that it is fun, can be fun, very creative, very engaging, very rewarding. And on that point, I also just want to mention another thing which is very me, as many of you in the audience will know by now, which is how can content serve you as coaches? What's going to come up? We talked to you guys about embracing your coaching approach in your marketing. So what is going to come out of the wash, both in terms of people's kind of meta understanding of how you work as a coach when you are content marketing, but also what's going to come out for you in the wash? What learnings are going to occur as a result of that thing of putting pen to paper, sitting down, trying to make a film, editing a film, or thinking, I'm not going to edit a film. And, you know, all those questions that might come up for you in terms of what am I actually saying? What do I want to say? As Simon has pointed out already, who am I trying to talk to? Let's just dial it back to the kind of mindset place of I'm not gonna kill myself trying. I'm gonna employ some self-compassion, some humour. I'm gonna try and have a good time while I do this. I'm open to learning about myself, and I want for people to know, because I'm clear in my own understanding of my values, what it is to work with me, and I want that energy to come out before even embarking on the what. But let's move on now, having sort of covered off the first thing that we like people to think about, which is their mindset. Let's move on to that sort of second stage, as Simon has mentioned, of who am I actually talking to?
Yeah, and I think it's when you realise that you're making content for your ideal client that you can then release some of this need to keep up with everybody else. So if there's another coach that you follow on Instagram and they post a video every day and they're doing this and they've got tens of thousands of followers, and you're thinking, God, I'm never going to get there, I can't do that. Ultimately, what I think it's important to understand is that you don't need to. You don't need to keep up with anybody else. You don't need to match what anyone else is doing. You don't need to copy what anyone else is doing, because quite often what works for one coach won't work for another. And I think it's about owning your own confidence and your own niche and saying, well, I work with this group of people over here, and this group of people want to know about this. So I'm going to make content that I think is going to excite and entertain and educate these people over here. And in doing so, you become more trustworthy and you establish credibility or authority in that area by saying, well, here's an experience I'd like to share about this, and I know that my niche is going to really resonate with that. So it's almost like you're giving some of your knowledge, giving some of your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings over to your niche and testing it out, seeing what happens. And that, Francis, I think touches on your point of, well, what do I get out of it? It's like, well, you actually gain clarity. And in repeating what you want your clients to sort of think or consider or try before they have that first sales conversation with you, and even if we don't like the word sales there, that first conversation with you where they are considering whether you're the right fit, that is a sales conversation. When they get to that conversation, what is it you'd like them to have thought about? What is it you'd like them to have done to make that conversation feel less like selling and more like telling? So, what do you want to tell people you do? And I think content is a great way of giving your methodology out to your prospective niche and saying, what do you think of that? And the right people are going to be like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. That's exactly what I need. I want to take that conversation the next step.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And, it's tempting to talk about niching in your ideal client in one of two ways. Well, there's only two ways we can talk about it. One is the kind of scaremongery thing of, if you don't niche, it's going to be a nightmare. Like, try and do content marketing if you're not clear who you're talking to. Okay, so that's one way of giving you guys a kick up the arse. Anyone who's still with us and is absolutely not keen on niching, there's another prod. It's like, try and do content, try and live your life happily and speak to everybody in a convincing, effective way. Okay, but I'm not going to go down that avenue because that's not really my style. I'm going to go down the other avenue, which is relating content to niching. And that is to say, if you're still struggling with niching, you're not sure who you want to work with, try doing some content marketing, because what will come out in the wash is, oh, that's really interesting to me to talk about. I feel like I want to talk to these guys. I feel like I want to have a conversation with these guys about that. I feel like those guys have got something to say about that. I feel like what I'm coming out with is possibly relevant for that lot, or something about what I'm saying feels special, something about what I'm saying sort of smells like no one else has said this stuff, or they've said lots about this but not in the way that I'm saying it. Soon, through content marketing as a practice, we become clearer on who we're talking to. So let's use content marketing if we're still struggling with working out who our ideal client is. Let's see what the response is to our content marketing so that we can start to see who we might work best with.
It's a real good test area. It's a test method, because you can throw your idea out to your audience and see what sticks, and not all of it will. Like, sometimes you'll think you've got a great idea or metaphor and you're like, oh, everyone's gonna love this, and you put it out and no, it doesn't land. People are just like, yeah, okay. You don't get any comments or questions or feedback on it at all. And then other times you'll just be writing about you might write about a stage in your method that you think is just, oh, everyone knows about this, I'm just gonna write it down because I got a question about it this week. So you make a blog about it and everybody you get tens of comments and people message you about it. Wow, this is amazing. I'd love to know more about this. And then suddenly you think, oh, there's something in that. This is obviously something that really resonates. And in doing more, the more content you put out, the more you'll learn what people really resonate with and what just turns people off or just is by the by. They're just like, meh, not really fussed about that at all. But some stuff, and it's often the stuff you think isn't going to be the stuff, is what really resonates. And people are like, wow, I'd never thought of it like that before. And I think when we think back to the previous chapter and we're thinking about product and we were talking about that method and, the way you take people from where they are now to where they want to be and those steps that the client goes through, that's all of the stuff you can start to talk about and explore when you make content. And even if you got to that bit in product and you're a bit like, yeah, but I'm not sure what that is, then content is the way you can find out. Because you can start to put that method out, that pathway to your client and then saying, what do you think of this? You can email it to a couple of prospective clients. If you meet someone at a networking event, you can send it to them afterwards and say, what do you think of this? And you can start to get some of that feedback and engagement on stuff that ultimately is either going to land really well or not at all.
That's it. And you know what, you're reminding me of so firstly that's making me think, content as a process. That's a nice approach to generating content. On the course that we're designing, we take people on an exercise that invites them to present themselves to someone that they trust and then to kind of hear what people are hearing. So there's an exercise on the course that we're building, which is about getting people to reflect back to you, so provide a safe space with someone that whose feedback you appreciate, and hear what it is that they hear about what it is that you're saying. Because sometimes I think there's that either imposter syndrome or can't quite see the wood for the trees, not so good at prioritizing, and actually there's something in what we are saying which for some person is really is really coming across very strongly. If you do the exercise several times, I'm not going to spell out what the exercise is because you have to join the community and do the course, then, you know, it's interesting that, you know, you find yourself subconsciously revisiting you know, similar headlines and not necessarily being aware of what those headlines are, and for somebody to hit, like, reflect back on you, it makes you clearer. You might have noticed, everybody in the audience and anyone listening on repeat here, that we're not going down a rabbit hole about tips and tricks. Okay, now there is lots to be discussed about which platform, how many followers, like what's going to work in terms of consistency. And yes, okay, we have some theories, particularly Simon, about all that sort of science stuff, but we also never want for anyone associated with us to think that that is the be all and end all of how to do good marketing. And in fact, you know, there's some intricacies around how some of that sort of some of those tips can actually be quite detrimental in terms of the sustainability of your business as a coach, if what you're looking to do is kind of establish a kind of healthy relationship with your marketing. But, you know, there are questions that come up on Simon around sort of SEO. I don't know if you kind of in 30 seconds want to kind of just blaze through the kind of FAQs that we might get around SEO or platform.
I mean, people often say, which social channel should I be on? And I'm like, all of them and none of them. It depends. So my phrase I'll always go back to is, if you're going to go fishing, go with a fisher. So if your clients are hanging out on Instagram, then be on Instagram. If your clients are on TikTok, be on TikTok. If your clients are on LinkedIn, guess what? You're going to have to be on LinkedIn. Now, whether you've got a login or you like the network is entirely irrelevant. You're running a business. It's not about whether you like Facebook or you agree with Facebook. If your clients are on Facebook and you want more clients, you've got to be on Facebook. It's just how it is. However, you don't have to be on all of them all of the time at the same time, you know, relentlessly posting content. So there's a lot of noise and arguably bullshit around gaining more followers. The thing is followers don't mean anything. Followers is a vanity number that is a device used by Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all of them, to keep you in the network, because people like to see that number grow. So I could point you to any number of people selling £100 courses, £200 courses on how to increase followers. The problem with followers is they're not fans. So followers may become fans. You do need, in some sense, to grow your following. Obviously, that's not what we're saying. But essentially, that isn't the key. And there's a big differentiator, which we'll move on to in a bit, about followers and fans. I think we'll get to that bit in a moment. But my point here is that ultimately growing an audience, I don't think is a very good tactic, because you're doing it for you. You're not doing it for them. And as we've said, if you're marketing for your own sake, if you're marketing for your own enjoyment, then who's that serving? Well, it's serving you. And as we've said in story, that's making you the hero. So if all you're talking about is how many followers you've got, and you're just talking all about you and your vanity, and look at my channel, it's growing, I've got all these followers, I'm getting all these views, and which I've seen people do, all you're doing is positioning yourself as the hero. And people don't follow heroes. They need the guide. So if you want to be the guide, then ultimately the difference between 5 people watching the story or the post and 5,000 is that, well, if 5 of them turn into customers in either scenario, then both have worked. So it's about disconnecting that vanity metric. So there was a mild rant on vanity metrics. The other thing I want to touch on, and this is a big one, is SEO. So there's SEO and there's ads. We'll cover both of those in the same mini rant. So SEO is great. It's a very effective tool for advanced marketing. So when people come to me and they say, like, Simon, I was thinking of doing some marketing, can you tell me what to do with SEO? I often sort of say, well, how many blogs have you posted? How many followers have you got on YouTube? How many podcast episodes have you done? And if they say none to all of those, then I'm like, well, what you're doing here is you're buying trainers and entering the London Marathon on the same day. You know, you are not ready for SEO. SEO is a very, very advanced tactic and strategy that can be used over a period of, I would say, 12 to 24 months. And it takes a lot of thinking about, a lot of work, a lot of consistent content creation. It takes a real heavy strategy. It's really good for e-commerce. It's absolutely fantastic for e-commerce. If you were coming to me wanting to sell water bottles and yoga mats, we'd be having a very different conversation. But with coaching, SEO isn't the be all and end all. It's an advanced strategy that is employed many years into. Like if you've got, thousands of people listening and commenting and getting involved in all of your content every week, then we can use strategy and SEO to really build and supercharge that. But SEO isn't something to jump into too quickly. And the last thing that we get asked all the time: should I use Google ads? Should I use Facebook ads? Should I use Instagram ads? My answer to that is always, well, is the thing that you want people to buy or do already working? So, for example, if you have an email list that you want people to join, are people already joining that mailing list? If you say, yeah, I get 3-4 sign-ups a week just off my website, then yes, you can use ads to get more people into that list because it's already working. If you say, I want to sell another place on my course using ads, I'd say, well, how many places have you sold? If someone says none, I'm like, So what you've got there is something that people don't want to buy, and what you're going to do is get another 10,000 people who don't want to buy it to come and look at it and decide they don't want to buy it. That's the brutal truth of it. If, however, you're like, I need to sell the last place, and I've all of my network have heard about it. I've emailed everybody. I have called everybody. I need a stranger who's then yeah, sure, go for ads because it's something that people want to buy. So ads are great for boosting things up and making them go a lot faster. But if you're not selling any part of your service, then using ads is essentially, it's a very expensive way to win clients, and there are better and easier ways to do that.
If you've enjoyed this rant, there's at least 4 of you in the audience who are not part of the Better, Bolder, Braver community. So I encourage you to join, because on a weekly basis you'll have the pleasure of Simon's company.
There you go.
In their tips and tricks session, where you'll get lots more of this, what you should do, and lots more of what you shouldn't do.
Yes. So this is what comes from. So for context of people who don't, thank you, Kieran, for putting the love in. So essentially, that's my overview of the world of marketing, and the reason I can, I guess, sort of talk to that maybe for some people who don't know about who we are. So I've run a marketing agency for almost 20 years, and I've worked with small to medium businesses. We've worked with about over 400 businesses. So I've heard all of the things that people come to, and I've heard all of this stuff before, and ultimately that would be that's the kind of TLDR of 20 years of agency experience. There you go. Love it.
Acronyms, elevator pitches, and rants, and
bang,
there you have Simon packaged in one Monday masterclass. So what you can see us doing here is a meta version of like content delivery, because everyone here is getting the intentionality and sort of journey that we have thought about we want to take you on in this Monday masterclass, but at the same time it's very emergent, so that's okay. But let's get back to the next point in the content conversation, which is sort of something we've already just talked about quite a lot, which is the sort of your story in all of this and why it matters. What are you bringing to this situation? Why, if you've identified who you want to talk to, why, if you've got into the right mindset, should you be the one to talk to the people that you want to talk to about what you're talking to them about. So I think I just want to mention in this bit the idea of kind of being at one with your philosophy and your approach. And last week we talked about product, and we talked about what that means as opposed to process and philosophy and approach. So as coaches, what's great, and we talk about this quite a lot as well, is that your marketing can mirror your coaching approach and can mirror the process and the outlook and the philosophy. And that's not to say that you need to spell out verbatim the process that each and every one of your clients will go on when they work with you. But the process might be emergence. The philosophy might be a celebration of emergence. And so your content can talk to specifically and overtly about that, but also can represent in this kind of really nice sort of sophisticated, unconscious meta way that for you, emergence is an important style for your coaching. So I just wanted to throw that one in on the old why you, your story bit.
Well, I think also to sort of build on that sort of, to just sort of move on from the rant, if you will. The thing is that it's easy when you're making content to just assume that everybody wants the same thing that you do. So if you just want to get your content done for the week, then it will feel like you just want to get your content done. And when people are selling courses, and I know a lot of coaches sell sort of either group programs, or they, maybe have an online course that they are selling, or they have a program on which they're selling seats. A lot of the resistance energy that we feel is people going, but it feels like selling. So I don't want to tell people about my course and my program because it feels slimy. It feels like you've got 7 minutes to sign up to my webinar, or you're going to lose the opportunity for blah, blah, blah. And it's all pressure selling nonsense. And it's like, there's a lot of money in telling people that there's a lot of money in selling coaching, basically. If you just type in coaching into Instagram, you will be swamped with people telling you that there is there's a lot of money in selling online programs, high ticket sales, all of this sort of nonsense. And ultimately, the reason that feels like selling is because you are doing just that. You're just selling it. Exactly, $299.99 if you sign up in the next 7 minutes. And actually, if you sign up in the next 7 minutes, imagine if we flipped it at the end of this just into a hard sell. But the thing, that'd be the ultimate draw, wouldn't it?
But you know what? Just to say at that point, also, it's difficult because if your course does start on Monday morning, just to say, then it's fair enough to be like you're going to have to be signing up by Sunday. Yeah,
that's fine.
It starts on Monday, so we don't want everyone to be like, don't employ any time metrics or kind of timescales to
tension
to your sales or anything like that, because sometimes there is tension. Sometimes
there has to be tension in the sale, otherwise it's not a sale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're not saying don't employ or understand the need. But anyway, that was a bit of an aside. Okay, back.
But I think the point is like, when you're making content, if you're making it for you, you're trying to sell the seats. I need you to come and do this course. Yeah. I need to fill this program.
Yeah.
I need to sell another 10 of these things, otherwise I'm not going to make it add up. That's you making content for yourself, and it shows, and it feels awkward, and it's like, ugh, and you're just like, would you like to buy my stuff? It's you standing on a soapbox, it's you selling. So what we want to do is flip that energy to telling. So rather than saying, I've got this program, it's 6 stages long, and in each of the stages we do you could host a series of webinars. What you could do is you could go through each of the stages in your methodology and just tell people about what you're doing. What those people will do is they'll understand more about your methodology. They'll buy into why you talk about what you talk about, what you're actually doing, and what they're going to get out of it. And if you start to tell people about what you do and you just consistently say the same things, then people start to trust you. And they start to feel more confident that you're the guide they've been looking for. Because if you're just trying to sell, then there's a load of sales tactics you can use. There's hundreds of books on how to sell. But all of those are going to revolve around, sort of closing and a lot of these sales tactics, which in elements of you do still need to have because you are running a business. But there's ways and means of doing that. And what is most effective when someone's making a long-term considered purchase is what we've spoken about before in story. And it's about making, and in client as well, it's about getting someone to flip their thinking, to change their belief in a topic. So they go, do you know what? I came to this webinar thinking that I had to make 5 Instagram posts a week, and they all had to go out at 8:03 a.m. In local time zones. I needed blah blah blah. That was my preconception. And now I've listened to Simon and Francis talk, and do you know what? I've totally flipped my thinking. I now think I need to move from that selling to telling. And if you can get people to do that, they then think, oh, I feel more like I trust you. Like, I have confidence in you know what you're talking about. And for the right people, they'll then go, do you know what? I'd like to find out a bit more about this because this is chapter 5. I wonder what's in the other 5 chapters, right? It kind of, it just opens that box of curiosity for the right person. Now, some people will come to this, and some of you on the replay probably won't even have made it this far, because you'll be like, I wanted tactics. I came here because I needed to 10x my income, and this is not happening. Goodbye. Click, and they're gone. But those people aren't for us, and that's okay. So I think that's what content can do, is it saves me and Francis having to have conversations with people who are looking to 10x their income.
Not to say that you can't 10x your income, by the way, right? You can. But
well, you can, but it shouldn't be. But it's not the promise. It's not the lure. It's not the 7-minute high pressure close.
No.
And I think that's the key. Is it's like there's always going to be someone else out there who is going to look after the people who are not for you, and that's great because it means you don't have to.
If it's the driving force, then no, we're not for you. Something that I just want to mention, you've made me think about, is the idea that you have to kind of constantly be coming out with new stuff.
Yes.
And so in part and parcel of, in spirit of people getting to know your process, people getting to trust you, is actually the opposite, which is it's not a case of like stick with what you're good at, but like you can talk about the same things. If let's take Simon and my 6th chapter process of going on the marketing journey. We have come up with this, we believe in it, we can talk about it clearly, we talk about it on the Monday masterclass. We've dedicated a week to each of our topics, and we are designing a course that takes you through that, and we're designing a massive, lovely, wonderful, immersive course that also takes you through it, that's like a sort of even better energy that you can go on the journey from. But the journey is there, the 6 chapters are there. Now when we talk to our community members about mindset, they kind of get where I'm coming from. Now when we talk about your ideal client, they know where we're coming from. So when we're thinking about content, we're not suggesting that you need to come up with a new thing every single week. And as we've talked about, you can get closer to what it is that you believe in when you're talking about it and talking about it again and inviting conversation about it. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that Simon and I didn't talk about anything other than our 6-stage process forever. It may be that we would have to look at the kind of turnaround of our audience in a different way. But nevertheless, in the same way as if you read an excellent book, or for some of the people in this audience, if the Bible is something that's important to you, it's the same thing. It's like reading that book, reading the Bible, again and again and again will bring out different things. Or listening to the same piece of music, you're going to have different feelings each time. If you've already gone on our 6-chapter marketing journey, if you then go on it again, then you'll have a different relationship and experience with it. And the other thing I just want to say on that front is that what we really love about the marketing journey, which, to be quite honest with you, wasn't necessarily the driving design behind it. The driving design behind it is what makes brilliant sense if you're trying to get excellent at marketing. But what we've come to love about it is that should you wish to kind of work with your clients on mindset, then it need be nothing about their marketing, but it will be very valuable. Should you like to work with your clients on the ideal person that they would like to surround themselves with in their lives to give them energy, then it will be a very nourishing conversation and might have nothing to do with how they're putting themselves out there or their marketing. Should you like to talk to your clients about your story, about your experience, then it might be a very useful experience for them to hear sort of referentially in relation to your own story, how they might like to approach their own journey. So you can see where we're going with this. Come with us on our 6-chapter marketing journey, and hopefully it will serve you again and again. But also we hope that it will give something to you in relation to something that you're doing that's not to do with your marketing. Now, we like that. We like that message. We can talk about that in our content. And I hope that it serves to demonstrate what we're doing and how it works for us.
Yeah, and I think that neatly leads us on to that that's thought about, well, coaches quite often think, well, I don't really have anything to write about particularly because I can't write about my clients because it's all confidential. I can't say, oh, this is Brian from Leicester and we worked on his feelings around so-and-so. It's like, yeah, okay, that may be the case. But what you can start to do is to say, well, actually, I've been working with someone, you don't even have to name them, I've been working with someone who, has been thinking this. So if you're thinking this, you might like to consider this element. You might like to ponder on this. You might like to try doing this. And then you can make content just around that little snippet of information, of that idea. And what that does is it just gently gets someone from here to here. And if you can do that a couple of times, they'll be like, do you know what? I've really got a lot out of that.
It's a bit like following a hashtag, isn't it? If you were to use a really amazing testimonial. Kieran Morris says, great analogy, thinking about listening to the same piece of music many times. That's your Instagram post. Hashtag content, right? Or, I'm not saying actually hashtag, but the point is if you've got, which you can, by the way, let's not talk about hashtags today. But maybe you'd like to talk about hashtags, Simon. Anyway, I'll leave that with you. So it's that thing of if people know that Francis and Simon are about the 6 different chapters, and they get to know what the 6 different chapters are, then, as Simon's saying, if you use a testimonial or use anything else, or you make a silent short film, you put it under the umbrella of that bit of your process, people who will know you will be like, oh yes, no, I get that, that's part of mindset.
Yeah, and I think, it doesn't always have to be, this is what I think about this. So, for example, you may get a question during a client conversation. So maybe someone's read your blog on stress management and sleep, and they email you and they say, oh, this is really interesting, I've been doing this and I was wondering, when you do your method, do you cover that? And then you might be like, that's interesting, that's the second time I've heard that question. So then you might do a blog on, well, actually, when you're thinking about this, you can get to that, and I do cover that on my method. So then you'll realise, you're answering that question. To take this literally, me and my friend Adam do a podcast where we just take the questions that we get that week or over a couple of weeks and just answer them in podcast form, marketing questions. And it is stuff like, should I use Facebook ads to get more of this? Should I do that? And we essentially just have a mini rant for about 10 to 15 minutes around a topic that are questions we get. So in terms of podcasting, or repurposing content, or trying to get the most out of what you're saying, there's a lot there for people to explore because you're always getting questions, you're always having conversations. So sometimes I'll say to my friend Adam, I'll say what have you been speaking about this week? And they'll be saying, do you know what, 3 people have asked me about what platform do you use to host your podcast? And he's like, great, that's this week's topic. And we go into it, and there you go, yes, you can watch more there. And when we do that, that's an easy way to just talk naturally. It's not a sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell you a $97 course. There's no lead gen in there. It is just me and Adam talking about it. So when we do our podcast, for example, the Better, Bolder, Braver podcast, available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, you can hear us reading our blogs out because not everybody digests information from reading. So in order to cover that, we have an audio version of it. And that audio version of the blog, some people who have read the blog listen to the podcast many weeks later, because I split the podcast and the blog out over time. And they're like, do you know what? I listened to that and I thought it sounded familiar and I've got something totally different out of it. Because I was in a different headspace. I was, walking the dog, the kids and a partner. And then I was like, I had the podcast in, or I was, washing up or whatever. And it's that element of the 4 different learning styles. So you got watch, read, listen, do. So watch is video. So all of you watching us here, there'll be the listen. So those of you listening to the podcast version of this, hello. Then reading, we write a blog summary of this episode. And then the do version of it is going to be the course chapter on content. So we've got all of the 4 learning styles covered in watch, read, listen, do. So to repurpose content isn't actually a lot of work, in the sense that we're not talking about making 4 different bits of content. It's just using the same idea, the same jumping off point in 4 different ways. And to do that is actually fairly simple. And we do go through a whole workflow of that in the community. We've done a couple of sessions on that in the tips and tricks, and there's obviously going to be it's going to be included in this module. But essentially the nuts and bolts of it are, if you're good at talking and you articulate yourself very well in conversational presenting, then start off with a podcast episode and then turn it into a blog. And if you're good at writing, then write a blog and then turn it into a podcast. So personally, I find if I was to make a podcast of a topic, it would be very, very long and very, very rambly, because I get like that when I'm talking, as the earlier rant illustrates. So for me, I keep it concise and write it and then turn it into a podcast. Whereas fellow member Andy Stedman is the other way round. He much prefers to start with talking, and he ad-libs it, and he goes around some bullet points and gets it into a really nice, sharp podcast, and then does the blog version. So making content, I guess those are the 2 big hurdles. Number one, it's why bother? It's that, first of all. So once you get over that mindset of you're not making content for you, you're making it for your client, it's then like, what on earth do I say? And I think that's the key in these chapters, is like, well, if you get to this point, you know why you're doing it, you've got your mindset sources, you've got your client, you've got your ideal clients, you know who you want to talk to, you've got a great story, which is, your what, why, your who, what and why sorted. You've got your product, so you've got an offer to make someone that product something they can actually buy, and you've got your method that helps them understand why they buy your product. So when people say, well, what have I got to talk about? Like, you've got all of that. You've got all of that to talk about. So there's loads of stuff. I mean, really, if you start to think about it, it's almost a case of, well, how are you going to fit this all in, rather than what on earth am I going to talk about?
Yeah, just quickly before we move on to the fact that this is actually lots of fun, just a bit of feedback for you, Simon. You're the one that said that you're waffling, I think, and I think quite a number of people here would actually describe you as incredibly articulate when it comes to doing podcasts. You know that I think I'm in awe of you when it comes to video content, and it's interesting because I think we can use that as an example of what I was talking about before, which is to kind of invite feedback from people you trust and say, what is it that you're hearing? Is that a convincing way of me telling you this thing? Because sometimes, evidently, people need to hear that, because the last thing I'd want is for Simon to think that when they talk with authority, empathy, conviction and energy about something, that they should do anything different to what they're already doing. So yeah, just to kind of segue there on the sort of reflection and confidence piece. But yeah, in terms of fun, next time we're going to talk to you all about painting a picture of what your potential client could be going on by way of a journey with you, and we'll touch on the product a bit more then, because the product is the vehicle which is going to help them get with you as the guide from A to B, or just be comfortable with A a bit more. So we're not going to go too deep, are we, today on sort of the product or the journey, although yes, they are parts of our process.
Well, I think the content bit is the reason content stands separate to journey is because it's a really big thing to adjust to evolve into, to find confidence with, and it's the bit that I would say almost all marketing training I've seen before in 20 years skips over. Everyone just goes from, you've got a great product, now go and sell it. Oh yeah, and just make some content. Next. And they just, and you're like, what, hey, well, hang on, what am I supposed to make? And they're like, all the content, like Instagram posts and stuff. Oh, just find someone else you like and do what they're doing, is generally what I hear. And it's that thing of just being like, well, hang on a minute, I don't like the sound of my own voice. The first time you put headphones on and you're like, hello, is this thing on? Is that me in there? Oh, that's what I sound like. You know, when I hear my voice back, I think I sound like Rob Brydon doing an impression of David Mitchell. That's what I think my voice sounds like. Now, everybody else says, no, you don't sound like that at all. But when I hear myself back, that's what I do. Now, I've been listening to my voice in recordings and voiceovers and various bits of, you know, video work for about 10 years. So to me, I'm just over it. I can edit my own videos, I can see myself in camera, it just doesn't faze me. But I completely appreciate the fact that every single time I get in front of the camera, I'm a bit shoulders up, can't talk, and it's that limbering up. So what we're here to, I think, today is to say, well, actually, we appreciate that there is a big part of making content that is about getting comfortable with yourself, getting confident to put your message out there. And I think the biggest part of what we want to say is that when you're on your own as a coach, it can be really daunting. Because you're like, well, if I make a video...
I just want to say, I can't help it. I've got to just say, Kieran, who is one of our beloved community members here, is an expert on exactly this stuff. If you'd like to post your website here, Kieran, feel free.
Yes, if anybody's struggling with it.
Yeah, Kieran absolutely specialises in getting people to slow down, feel more confident in what they're saying, feel able to say stuff where they felt that there was some sort of technical, linguistic, presentation problem. So, you know, Kieran's a great one to chat to about all this sort of stuff. Sorry, I interrupted you actually mid-flow there.
Well, actually, Rebecca's comment just come in here. It says, it can be overwhelming. Does anybody actually care what I have to say? And we hear that a lot, Rebecca. Okay. That's something loads of people come to us with. And I think the short answer is yes, your clients are desperate to hear that thing. So if we think of our awareness stages, so you've got unaware, problem aware, product aware, no, solution aware, product aware, most aware. So unaware, people don't even know. So in the unaware phase, when we're just going about our daily business, we've got no idea that the problem that you can help us with as a coach even exists. And there are millions of people out there right now in that place. However, some of them, they're having a little rumbling of something not feeling quite right. So we use the word problem because we have to use a word to define it. It's not judging their situation or their current life place, but we have to use a word to describe it, and problem is that word. So at some point they're like, oh, frustration, doesn't feel right, something's not working here. That is where your client really needs to hear what you've got to say. Because that is the moment where if you lead with empathy, you can say, hey, are you feeling like this? Have you noticed when you do this, this happens? Is this frustration something you have? And people are like, what? Other people feel like this? I had no idea. At which point they go into problem aware. So they then raise up in a level of awareness to the point where they're like, oh, this is a problem. Something I'd like to do something about. So I need a resolution to my problem. That's why we use the word problem. And then they can learn from you. And that is where you can add so much to someone's life by simply sharing what you know about that problem. Because they'll deep dive. They want to hear, they want to watch, read, listen, do things to know more about that. So just raising up to that problem awareness phase, you can change someone's life. And that's that thing. If you sometimes hear, I read this book and it changed my life. That's all it is. So you've gone from unaware to problem aware and you're like, wow. So at that point, they then go to solution aware. And at that point, they're then looking to do something about it. And as coaches, that's the sensitive area, and that is where people often need to feel like they've got a guide, someone to help them get from where they want to be, where they are now, the problem, to where they want to be. And then that map, that method, that process, pathway, whatever you want to call it, is where you start to explain that. And then they become product aware, and that's where they want to talk to you about how you can work together. So that is, I guess, the answer to does anybody care? And the short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is not everybody, but those who really do, if you can take them on a journey with content and with your your watch, read, listen, do to make sure you're covering everybody and getting everybody at different stages of awareness, then actually there's a lot of people out there who really do want to hear about it. And over time and through consistency and with great content, you're giving them that opportunity to learn more about you.
I also just want to thank you so much for that amazing summary, because in fact, ironically, Rebecca Clark here is an excellent example of someone, let me take myself, a parent of small children who is not necessarily problem aware in relation to Rebecca's product, which is sound baths, tapping, and another third, and I can't remember what it is, so Rebecca will let us know, method for, thank you, for addressing child anxiety, providing sort of a space to address in really interesting, creative, sort of relatively lesser known techniques, bringing about a sense of kind of tranquility, calm, sort of self-awareness, confidence amongst very young children. So I did not go out there going, what I really need is to deal with this problem that my 4-year-old has. Less so did I say, what I think I might be needing to do is sort of some sound bath, gong, meditation, tapping, breathwork workshops. But Rebecca is, in a way, coaching parents who need some support in sort of seeing that there's something that they could be working on, possibly in a better way with other people, led by an expert who understands this. So the content that Rebecca can put out there in relation to those approaches is the content that we're talking about, which Simon has just really nicely summarised. The work that Rebecca does, yes, okay, it might not be that some people care, people without children, some people who are completely unaware of their own personal, emotional and psychological journey may not think that what you're talking about is relevant to them. Fine, don't want to work with them. So, as Simon has said, it's not for everyone, but Rebecca's Rebecca, feel free to please post your website at this juncture. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. But everyone here is doing something similar. So everyone here has a thing that allows people to go from problem unaware to problem aware to solution aware, and understand that you are the person to help guide them along the way.
Yeah.
Content party.
Yeah. So in that sense, the content is the bits of content literally that people consume along the journey. And the journey is what we look at next week, which is how do we sensitively and with intention move people through those stages of awareness, but how do we do that in a way that doesn't feel like selling and feels like authentic, truthful and empowering conversations. And the content is just that hurdle we have to jump over in order to take the journey. Because if we go straight from products to journey and then just say to everybody, off you go and make the content, then we get all of those questions and all of that sort of, not quite sure about that. And what we're not saying here is that in order to take your clients on a journey, you have to do videos, podcasts, blogging, but you will find what medium works well for your clients and really resonates with them. So, for example, a podcast may resonate with people who, probably people who used to commute, but maybe now people who walk the dog, who don't have much time, for example, they're out for a walk or whatever, it's their moment on their own, and a 10-15 minute podcast may be exactly what they're looking for. And that format may work really well for you. You may put the same content up on YouTube and people they're not in the headspace to watch it. Your audience just doesn't quite get the content on YouTube because they only watch YouTube when they're on their laptop, for example, and when they're on their laptop they're in work mode. So I think one of the areas of content that is often overlooked is that you do have to kind of try different things, but I think, as Francis is hinting at, you have to be emergent with it, and it has to be something you enjoy doing. And sometimes in putting yourself out there, getting out of your comfort zone, you discover that you're maybe slightly better at something than you thought, or that actually making a video of you explaining your method made you realise how confusing it is. Because you're like, even I didn't understand that video when I watched it back. Right, back to the drawing board. And there you go. And that is the clarity. And sometimes you'll make a video and you'll be like, this is superb. You send it out, you put it on LinkedIn, for example, people watch it and they're like, still not quite sure how this works, or is this for me? And then right, okay, and that feed, okay, so now I need to add a little bit to the beginning where I say, if you are this person and this is where you're at now, then this is for you, and then that answers that question. So content is always evolving, and content doesn't last forever. You know, at maximum, content lasts, you know, a couple of months in a blog. If you post it on social, it's anything from an hour to maybe 3 weeks.
Although people can find stuff, can't they? You know, people talk about evergreen content.
Well, that's just content you keep posting.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we're talking about, isn't it? It's just
blogs that are on your
blogs can last quite a long
people
time.
Will come. I don't want to. I'm not really a sort of tactics, tips, and tricks person, but there's 2 things that I just want to leave off on before we finish today. So one is earlier you mentioned, you know, if your people are on LinkedIn, that's where you need to be. That's caveated with if you're a coach who just can't stand social media. That doesn't mean that you cannot market yourself or do any business development. So we do support people who really feel quite uncomfortable, unfamiliar with, and just can't stand social media. So just saying. And then also something I was going to say is that in the community, we've just been talking now about sort of, you know, your 100 true fans, not thinking that a number metric means success. For example, on Friday I'm running a workshop in the community which allows us all to work together for an hour and a half on something around our social media that is important for us to work on and just work together as a little working group. And it might be that, for example, 1 or 2 members on that on that workshop will want to curate sort of who they're following, and you know, it's also a case of not just what you're putting out there in your content, but what content are you actually digesting? How useful is it that you are following your friend Bob and his gardening skills, or you know, so and so's 4-year-old's birthday party? You know, if you're really serious, you know, by all means do that if Facebook provides you with that opportunity and it really interests you. But think about other platforms that are great for you to digest content that you can then comment on and repurpose. You know, there's really amazing skills, things that you can do on social media, you know, sharing in your story, whatever, that allow you to go, this was cool. Do you know what I mean? So it's about sort of making sure that you're hearing what people that you're interested in are saying in their content as well. So there's an exercise there in sort of just streamlining who you're following.
And I think also quite often it's a case of, well, if you've had a negative experience with social media, then, you know, there are ways of using it which, you know, are less intense and need less sort of continuous involvement, because I think there is a big industry behind telling people that you need to post very often. It's often funded for and encouraged by the network themselves, but there are ways of using LinkedIn that don't mean you have to be on there every day, all day. You know, there are ways of doing this. So I think it's a case of maybe re-looking at, you know, where you think you need to be, and actually with this fresh concept of making content for the people who really want it and delivering value, then actually is that something that's going to bring you a lot more joy and excitement and happiness, posting that to a wider audience? Does that change how you feel about maybe a network you haven't looked at yet? So there's a lot of work around that as well, just in terms of exploring different places.
I've just posted a blog post that we wrote that includes something about the comparison trap as well. Because
yes, yeah, that's really good.
So I think it's,
yeah,
you know, you're not. There's no point comparing yourself to anyone else.
No,
really,
exactly. So I think that brings us neatly to the conclusion of chapter 5. content. So essentially next week we are wrapping up the Better, Bolder, Braver marketing journey with Journey. So that is going to be a little bit of how to get your client to follow you as the guide, to say, I want to work with you. It's going to be how to use all of the previous chapters. So if you haven't watched any of those other chapters, we'd invite you now to go back and maybe have a watch of some of the other ones. By watching this, you have already signed up to the wonderful Crowdcast, so they will keep you up to speed with other events we've got. You can save your spot on upcoming events, so it will just ping you a link magically to your inbox before the event to make joining even easier. If you'd like to take this conversation even further and talk to other coaches who are also sitting there thinking, what am I going to write about? Where should I post? What am I doing? You want to get involved, be in a really friendly group of lots of other coaches who are all in the same position as you, thinking what you're thinking, doing what you're doing, then luckily we've got a community just for that. betterbolderbraver.com. There's a button underneath here you can click on, that will take you to a page that will tell you all about what the community is all about. So do give that a look if you want to join a welcoming community of people.
Yeah, there's several lovely members here. Thank you. It'd be great to have anyone who is not part of it to join us. So thank you all. That was fun. Love it. Stuff. Yay. Get fun with your content. Get fun. Get happy. Have fun.
Exactly. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for listening and watching. See you next time.